Hello again, everybody. This is Bobby Mills, the 1,000-yard guy for the Independent.com. We're here with another version of Bobby Mills Independent Sports Talk. Once again, we have Eric Williams over here on my right and the famous Jim Langan on the left, and we're going to talk about a little high school football to start out. I'd like to mention a team we did not mention last week, Northwest Vikings. They started out that week with a 34-0 win over Gearing, and then went out to Alliance and conquered that bunch out there. Any comments on that? It was a good win. I think, what was it, 17-7 with that sophomore quarterback and everything. So great start for the Vikings after losing a whole bunch of folks a year ago.
Absolutely. I thought it was a great game. It was a great 2 weeks for them. They start out with the home win against Gearing with a great big win. Got a lot of young guys in there later in that second half, which I always think is important to do in that first game and get some of those guys some game experience. But then going up to Alliance and getting down early and then coming back and fighting through that. And it's a great road win. So starting out 2-0 for that Northwest team is tremendous right now.
Schedule probably helps a little bit, but still 2-0 is 2-0, and you know they've got Columbus coming in this week, and good preparation for that because Columbus drops down a class this year. So, how about the Islanders going out to North Platte and winning big? What do you think about that, Jimmy?
Just that we talked about last week, Kearney and Grand Island are probably a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. Kearney right now, if you look at them, they had the overtime win, and then Grand Island beat North Platte pretty handily.
Yep.
What's really weird about the schedules right now, you realize that Kearney High doesn't have an undefeated team on their schedule the remainder of the year.
It looked a little friendly, didn't it?
Yeah, it's there. I mean, but one of the teams they're going to play is one of the Miller teams, which is really good. But Grand Island's schedule is a little bit tougher, so they'll have some games, but they can make their goals to make the playoffs and see if Grand Island can get in. But back to Northwest, I didn't say anything about that. But Grand Island Northwest, their goal's the same thing: try to get in the playoffs. And like you said, their schedule maybe is a little weaker at the top end, than it will be at the bottom end. But you know what? That I've heard nothing but good things about that young quarterback.
Wow, good. Yeah, he's thrown right into the situation, which we'll cover in a minute. And a team I didn't mention last week was Heartland Lutheran because they didn't play. So they open up play dropping down into the 6-man ranks. And Zach Mayhew, our executive producer, I might add, and behind the camera, I believe he was covering that game and thought they looked awful good. And I thought for quite a number of years that should have been a 6-man football team, but sometimes people get thoughts in their head. I know when Dave Plond was there, one of the first football coaches, or the first out there, we talked about how well they might do in 6-man, but of course they wouldn't hear of it, and it's a pride thing. But 71 or 72-0 over Maywood Hayes Center. Anytime you can pitch a goose egg in 6-man football, if you know how wide open that is. First and 15, I gotta remember that. That's a good way to open up for that bunch, man. I mean, they have not won over 3 games in one season. That's a great win for that program. And, I would say a great quarterback, a good wide receiver, one big lineman. You got a good nucleus for a team.
One thing about 6-man football that I've kind of noticed is there may not be much separation between one team and the next, but the score gets very quickly out of hand.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't take much for separation. You got a little bit better team,
Right.
It can get really ugly fast.
Well, and it becomes an athleticism. I mean, this speed
Bingo.
guy. I mean, you look at back when Elba had that state tournament team, and they had the Jed Douche. That he did everything. He was a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and I mean there was just no covering guys like that. So it's a speed factor, and I think right now Heartland Lutheran's got it, and hopefully that continues throughout. And they have a good year. They've definitely worked hard and deserve to have a great year, and I think they got a chance to do that this year.
Good question. But back then, that running back had 2,000 yards for Elba, too. There's 2 of the 3 components. And this week they play St. Edward, who is state runner-up, and once again they were blown out in the state finals, but it's Riverside. So they'll get a test this week. They'll find out what they're made of, and I think it's a good deal that right off the bat, after a big win, that they come back and do this, and they'll know where they're at. Central Catholic lost to Kearney Catholic, 35-14, I believe it was. I think they improved. From the first game to the second game. Kearney Catholic's an awful tough team, but Masker and Holtmeyer, who I believe might have been hurt in that game. But Kearney Catholic's a tough physical team, so I think they made some strides there. And with Bob Fuller at coach, man, he's an old hard-hitting guy from Plasma, so they're going to improve over the season. Unfortunately, they have David City Aquinas coming in Saturday, but I think they'll see some improvement. Anspaugh had a good game at quarterback, so any comments on Central Catholic? I mean, they've got a brutal schedule.
Yep.
Somebody must have been mad at them when you throw in SCOTUS and, oh my goodness, I don't know how you'd handle it, but if they make any improvement all week, week in and week out, tell you what, that's going to be a good deal for that program. So I'm going to talk about, did St. Cecilia losing to Wilbur Claytonia 42-0 shock either one of you guys, or have you followed Wilbur closely or not?
Well, I mean, you had them playing last year, late in the season, in the playoffs and things like that, in the finals.
C1.
Yeah, you kind of look at the depth and you were talking about it prior to what St. Cecilia had coming back.
Yeah.
Probably on paper it shouldn't shock you, but I mean it's just a storied program in Hastings St. Cecilia that it is to see a 42-0. It kind of shocks you when you're just passing by and reading the scores, but like you and if you follow it pretty well, probably doesn't shock a lot of the people that follow the high school football to a T. But I think, like I said, to the common man, it is a shocker.
It isn't, and one thing I like about Wilbur Claytonia is they have some big linemen, like Zach back there, and I mean they held St. Cecilia to a -25 rushing, 67 total yards. So sometimes we talked about preseason ratings. Sometimes I think it's not Stu's fault at World Herald or Riley Jane and the Lincoln Journal-Star or whatever, Bob Jensen. Sometimes you just don't have much to go on, even though you do have a sheet. You don't know where to put people. And I don't think it's their fault, but I think some teams were rated too high. Happens in college. We were talking about that. Jimmy, do you think in college they might place them there strategically, or do you think it's just tradition?
Well, I
He
think
just talked about USC. Come on.
Well, USC got beat by an Alabama team, but USC led the game. Another thing is kind of interesting is Wisconsin played LSU. The game's in Wisconsin. It's only a 2-point game. Tell me who the best team is.
Well, yeah.
Who's really the best team between LSU and Wisconsin? If they play in LSU, I know who I'm taking.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? So what I'm saying, sometimes when you look at things and back to St. Cecilia a little bit, I think sometimes once the score gets a little bit and you're starting to play from behind. St. Cecilia hasn't played from behind for a lot of years.
Oh.
They did play, they got beat by Aquinas pretty good. They had some injuries before that game, so they didn't get to play full strength. But again, in high school football, it doesn't take much sometimes for the score to get out of hand a little bit here. And I wasn't at the game, but I do know this. I know that they play Sutton. That'll be a really tough test for them this week. And then Doniphan Trumbull will be tough. But that district, that thing was kind of loaded, and now it doesn't look so good. You got St. Cecilia and Doniphan Trumbull, and then you got 4 teams that are 0-2 in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, somebody's going to come out of that thing, and they're going to win that district, and they're going to go on to the playoffs. But maybe Wilbur Claytonia is just that good, and they probably are.
Oh, they had so many returning starters.
Yeah.
Well, it makes a difference. Let's just go briefly through the who plays who in the city next week. Omaha Northwest comes in at 2-0. That might be a mirage there as they play Grand Island. I'll take the Islanders in that one. And of course, we know Columbus is at Northwest. That should be a great matchup. They're improved, dropped down a class, and we talked about Aquinas at GICC and St. Edward at Heartland Lutheran. Either of you noticed about the youth movement on the quarterback slot and the upper classes? Adams Central is a freshman quarterback, so does SCOTUS. I haven't seen that, and I guess a freshman quarterback in Class B or A is usually unheard of. But C1, that's a strong class. I don't know that either one of these kids have bloodlines. And I've seen sophomores even in Class A, but they all had bloodlines. Do you guys, in your officiating experience and coaching experience, have you ever seen so many young quarterbacks all over the place?
Yeah, I think like you made a good point. I think in 8-man 1 and 8-man 2, you'll see it a little more often, than you do in C1 and C2. But, I think Adams Central, that was their second-team quarterback. Their first-team quarterback got hurt, and he's thrown in there. But, Adams Central had a really good 8th-grade football team.
Did they?
Had quite a bit of success. And I think they're just going to go, hey, this is our guy. And you're maybe they're going to limit him to what he can do, but I don't know. Maybe he can throw the ball really well. Maybe he can do a lot of things. And I'll tell you one thing, guys, he's going to get better.
Oh, I
Yeah,
know.
you get a freshman
Absolutely.
quarterback, you get a senior guy. Tommy Armstrong Jr. How much better is he going to get?
Well,
Let's be honest about
I
that.
know.
So you get a freshman quarterback from week 2 to week 5, you'll see some improvement there.
And
Well,
this kid's already had 500 yards passing for AC.
And they're probably forced to start here. If they had a really good junior, senior, they'd be playing in the JV games. But right now, they're kind of forced into that role.
And I think anymore with the way weightlifting and agility and everything that's gone on, it's gotten so much better to where the speed of even that freshman game is a lot faster than it was, 10, 15 years ago, to where, that speed of that varsity level, yeah, you're playing under the Friday night lights, but it's probably not a whole lot different from an underclass JV team or JV game that he's been playing here. So you might be seeing a lot more of it just because the speed is not as big of a factor anymore as it was at one point.
Good point. And how many camps do these kids go to? And they're not starting to go when they're freshmen and sophomores. They're starting to go in the 7th and 8th grade. So, like Jim said, I might ride this kid all the way through, all the way through his senior season if he keeps producing like that. So anyway, I want to mention a couple of the volleyball teams in town. That started last week. Northwest rated all the way to number 6 in the overall ratings, which is not really strange. Senior high not rated this year. That's a little strange for Bill. Northwest is 4th in Class B. Central Catholic, I believe, number 8th in C1. And Central Catholic's softball team, which is a conglomeration of
Trumbull, Wood River.
Yeah. I don't know who else, but they're 10th in softball in Class B, so that's a good thing for some of the minor sports. Of course, volleyball, I'm going to get a whole bunch of argument whether that's a minor sport or not.
Hey, I'll tell you real quick. Grand Island Northwest, though, that was impressive. They went to Beatrice, and they won that meet. And if you looked at the teams that were in there, that was an extremely tough meet. So you've got all kinds of schools that competed in that, and so anytime you can win what was there, 12 teams in that?
Oh,
you know what I mean?
always.
And so they win the whole thing. So that's very impressive. I think Grand Island Northwest is going to be pretty good.
What's great about in-state volleyball, Nebraska high school volleyball, is the summers when you do the camps that you talk about in football. When you do the volleyball camps, the competition that you face just in this state alone is remarkable between all the classes. And Northwest and Central Catholic, even senior high, has really taken advantage of that and have competed well. And that's what makes them better when they go against their districts and things like that, is because they're going to these Class A, they're going up a class and going to those competitions and competing in them too. So I think the summer camps have really been effective for both Northwest and Central Catholic over the past few seasons for sure.
And Kearney Catholic's going to have a good
Yep.
volleyball team, too, in the area that we're talking about. And I don't know. I guess I'll have to wait and find out who's going to be good in Class D. I'll have to wait a little bit longer to find out if there's teams in the area that can compete and whatever. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, because, and like Central Catholic and Northwest, Diane Rose, Sharon at Central Catholic, they're not afraid to go to these summer camps and play Class A teams. So, we can talk about that forever, but they're always going to be good. We've got a new feature this week, by the way, since we have one of the finest officials in the state to my left. You're right. Ask the official. And I've got a couple of questions. And my first one, and this might be a little general, Jimmy, what's the most misunderstood call or non-call in high school football in your experience over the years?
Well, let's talk a little bit about college football if I can, just
Sure.
real fast.
Heck yeah.
I think the one thing that is really tough for officials and fans is when you have the helmet-to-helmet contact and how it is being called. And if a guy launches himself into somebody and hits somebody in the helmet, these players are getting ejected now. And the only players that are getting ejected are the guys that are on the kickoff team, the punt team, and defensive backs. Because no one else is in that position to launch and make that play. And what's really tough is what used to be 5 years ago, a good play by a defensive back to break up a pass is now considered to be almost an ejection. So you have to change your mind. You have to get your mindset about what a helmet-to-helmet contact is, and these players are getting ejected from these football games for doing these helmet-to-helmet. And the thing of it is, if you go back and go, no, I don't, I'm going to go back to old school, then you're not with the times. It's like
No.
saying you don't want to use a cell phone. I'm not going to text anybody. Well, you can do that, but I mean, you're going to be way behind with everybody else. But what they're trying to do, they're trying to make football safer because of the concussion in the NFL and the NCAA, and it's going all the way down to high school. So those great hits that used to be celebrated by fans and celebrated by teammates are now ejections. So that's I was going to say right now, that's probably the hardest thing that we have. Your thoughts, man?
Well, one thing you brought up, the college helmet to helmet, the targeting rule, and the ejections. And this year they added a new rule to where the booth official can now call down and say, we need to review this thing. I wish it was more uniformed in the call. I mean, you look at the Nebraska game, the ejection that was made in that one. You could have almost looked at it and possibly said he may not have even hit him with his helmet, and he gets tossed from the game after the review. But then I go to watch the Notre Dame Texas game, and the hit that was on the Torrey Hunter kid never even got reviewed, and there's no uniformity of that call, and I wish the NCAA as a whole would get together and do that with that call, and I'd be fine with it. But it just seems like certain conferences have more of a focus on it than other conferences do, and I just think that's not right.
I think it's a great comment you made. I actually think that was the best example you had. And I'll give you another example, guys. Is if you have a face mask penalty, and it's a 15-yard and a 5. But the worst that can happen is 15.
Yeah.
It's not 15 in an ejection.
Right.
And what does happen sometimes is if you've played the game, and most of us have, and you don't have to play it to figure this out, though, is sometimes a running back is at a level, he's about 6 foot tall. All of a sudden he ducks, and where your arm was at, now all of a sudden you got a face mask. But what you need to do, you need to get your hand out of there real quick. But since you've already started your tackle, sometimes it's really hard to do that. So you go on, you take him down, you get a 15-yard penalty. But you do not get ejected.
Right.
People are upset that it happened, but we live with it.
Right.
The trouble with the targeting is the same thing can happen. You can have a guy that can duck, and now where you started to hit him, you were going for his numbers. Now he ducks, and now it's a helmet to helmet, and now you're being ejected. And I don't think people like the idea that now you no longer get to play. I don't think they have trouble with the target.
Right.
I think the ejection's the problem, and I think the NCAA needs to look at this. And I think it's unfair because if you, like I said, if you're an offensive lineman or a running back, very seldom. The only time you ever get called for that is if you throw an interception and then you're making a tackle.
Yep.
You don't get that. It's the defensive backs. And like I said, if you're a man that's sprinting down on a punt and you're the first guy to get there and you hit a defenseless player, and the defenseless player has now changed too. Nebraska benefited one time, you guys, against Michigan State. A Michigan State guy intercepted a pass, ran it back for a touchdown, and way away from the play, a guy decided to block a Nebraska guy. They brought it back. Michigan State would have led 31-14 the way it ended up. Nebraska ended up winning at the gun.
Well, no, you can.
But your high school, the high school question, I think, if going back to that, there's a lot of them because the rules are different. One of them is on a missed field goal. Guess where the ball goes? On the missed field goal, the ball goes to the 20-yard line every time.
Oh yeah, right. So,
but we get yelled at. The ball should be on the 27 because last night on TV they were watching a game and that's where it was.
Yeah.
Now does it have to get to the end zone? Or
because if it doesn't get to the end zone, you can return it.
Yeah,
sure.
But in the high school, you cannot return anything except an interception
right.
or a fumble recovery that's in the end zone. If the ball breaks the plane on any kick, it's dead.
Right. Yeah.
But in college, you've seen the 109-yard runs or and here's the other thing on those. Coaches are going to have to be smarter when they try those long field goals because guess who they have out there on the field on those field goals? Well, you got your field goal kicker who's usually not a great athlete, your holder who's sometimes not a good athlete. You've got your biggest linemen on the field that are protecting him so he can't. Okay, so now you've got 7 guys that can't make a tackle.
Yeah.
And especially when the guy returning, it's an Olympic sprinter
Wide
that's going to
receiver,
go 109 yards. So that's why you have so many times does this thing break because you're on your punt team. You have those really good athletes being able to run. So that's why those things are broke a lot, and it happens more frequent than you think.
Yeah.
Well, is there no targeting call in high school? I don't think there is yet. Is there?
No, you can't target, and you're ejected for it. But we don't get a look at a replay.
I don't.
We don't get a look at a replay. But if we have a targeting and that's the crown of the helmet.
Yeah.
And it's called spearing. And it's been in there forever. If you use the crown of the helmet, you're to be ejected. You don't see it called very much.
No.
But you probably would if guys were losing games because the NSA said, hey, you missed that, so we're going to fine you $1,000.
Yeah.
You know how much money those guys get to paid? NCAA football referees get about $3,000 per game. So you get the whole crew down there. You're paying $24,000 for officials. Well, you don't want to lose a $3,000 paycheck. If you're working 10 games, that's $30,000. You do not want it. So you better do what they tell you to do.
Yeah.
In high school, I think sometimes maybe we have a tendency to leave a kid in the game thinking, he didn't mean that.
Right.
We're going to go 15 yards, but we're going to go ahead and just call it a personal foul.
And it's one of those bad things to where, and I think both college and high school kids, they're limited on how many games they're going to play. Obviously, not everybody's going to make it to the pros to where you really hate to eject a kid when this might be one of his last 8 games or whatever that he's ever going to play in the sport. And I think that's a tough thing, like I said, both college and high school to do to a kid in that situation.
In the targeting, I know we've talked about it a lot, but one of the things you talk about in the bowl game, we had a player at the UCLA game. Help me out with his last name. Gary.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, he's missed 3 games. We talked about him being a captain, but he's missed 3 games. And the thing that's interesting about that is he might have had 30 fans that went to go see him play.
Yeah.
So they all fly out there to watch him in the Holiday Bowl. They all buy tickets. They're all sitting in the crowd, and now because you have a call, and we didn't think it was the correct call, when his targeting. Remember, that was a pretty good.
That was the
Yeah, and guess what? He has to leave the field, and all those people are up there, and they came to watch him play. So you affect a lot more people than just one guy now.
I know.
So it's kind of a deal. Hey, back to that real quick when you're talking about that. What did you guys think about Nebraska's 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties? I'm getting tired of it. Nebraska was the most penalized team in the nation last year.
Yeah.
I didn't like the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties.
And if you listen to Riley on Monday, he's very frustrated with it. I think he even showed his frustration after the game in his post-game interview. And I think, it's one of those things to where you're eventually just going to have to do something, off the field if it stares, and you're just going to run them to death until they get sick and tired of it or something. But I agree with you. Last week it's not going to affect you, but you get down the road to where you're playing at Ohio State and it's a 1-possession game. If somehow we get to that point, you can't have those things. So he's going to have to eliminate it somehow, and it's going to be fast, I think.
And to me too, on some of those unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, the one where we ran into 2-point conversion, and I like that kid. He's a nice player. He's holding. He's good.
Yeah.
But he actually, he kind of taunted him. We're up 36 to 10 now. I mean, you're kind of taunting the other team a little bit here, and I don't think we want that reputation.
No.
Miami of Florida used to do some stuff like that. I don't want to get that one.
I don't know if he was really taunting. It may have looked like that, but when it's his first time ever getting to carry the ball and he got it into the end zone and you had 90,000 people.
Hand the ball to the referee.
And all he did was just kind of spin it. I mean, I agree. Yeah.
Hand the ball to the ref. Act like you'd been there before. Act like he'd scored a few other touchdowns. I'll bet he scored a few in high school.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
I'll bet he knew how to act there.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me, and I'm old school, is that it seems that there's a lack of discipline being administered by the coaching staff in a deal like this. You can't do this, and they've got to know that, and maybe they will not.
And I'm wondering how much of that was from the previous coaching staff, and maybe this other coaching staff's maybe trying to clean it up as much as possible.
Well, I think it's been enough games now.
You
got a year to do it.
You better get it fixed. Yeah. Good enough.
On this targeting thing, one last thing. Why would you want to lead with your head anyway? What kind of sense does that make?
No, but
seriously, just for some guys do it in the NFL.
The funny thing is you're taught to put your head through the football. I mean, in high school, no, but it's just like he was talking about earlier. You're looking like you're going to be hitting him in the football, but he lowers down, and all of a sudden it becomes a helmet.
Then it's not,
right. Yeah.
But I think some of these guys just let's say, hey, I don't know.
Well, that's why I think the replay's so critical. You get to look at it.
Yeah.
And I think the sad thing about it right now, if there's any doubt, you're supposed to eject them. I wish it was the other way around.
I don't know. Yeah.
If there was any doubt. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, hey, you know what, man? Because we're not here to call them might have beens. This isn't official. Even in basketball, it might have been a travel. It might have been 3 seconds. It might have been. I'm not going to blow my whistle, but I'm not calling them might have beens. I'm calling 3 seconds when it was 3 seconds clearly. I'm not a might have been. I'm not here to call might have beens.
And that's why you're a great official.
Thank you.
And another thing. Well, anyway, we've covered that, and I think it's a good deal. But why? Yeah, my question was, why are they having an emphasis? And you covered it before in the Big Ten, and it is an emphasis in the Pac-12 or whatever. NCAA needs to get there and have a uniform thing. And so we'll do that thing later. Hey, I was going to ask, and I've got a different opinion on this, and you're young, and you will, and you're younger than I am, and older than him by a couple of years. Who's the greatest high school athlete you ever saw in your life? And this is going to be a harder question. We'll start with Jimmy. I mean, there could be more than one.
I'm going to go with some girls first, guys.
Oh, that's
I'm gonna
heck
go,
yes.
Carlene Erickson, when she used to
Yeah.
run the state track meet, how far she was in front of everyone. You know, what a tremendous thing that happened there. It was amazing what she did for high school sports in Nebraska, because at that time, they were not, even before that, they were not considering not letting girls run that far.
I know.
You remember that? The 3,200 is too far, the 16. They used to run the 50-yard dash.
I know.
You know, the 220 was about as far as they let them run. I mean, talk about some sexism, guys. But, you know, when she went out there and what she did was absolutely amazing. You know, St. Cecilia had a really good track teams in 1973, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. We could
They
just go on
set
and
the
on.
standard.
And, you know, they had Nancy Kindig kind of was a great athlete at that time. There was a lot of girls that were on that relay, and they still have the record for the relay. Karen Dahlgren, remember her at Bertrand?
Yes,
she
I
ended
do.
up going to Nebraska, and she coached. You know, Steph Boley was at Burwell. Kelly Benson was at Grand Island. That's some of the ones that used to play in the 1970s. And you know, I coached against some of those girls when I was coaching volleyball at
Yeah.
Ravenna, and I lost a lot of games because of
I
it.
suppose,
But
yeah.
you know, Carla Rourke played at GICC. She was a tremendous hitter. But you know, those are some girls that I can think of. You guys, if you got some girls that you can think of that are more recent right now, but look at the amazing triple jumpers we've had in the pole vaulters from GICC, and the girl from Kearney Catholic
I
was an
know.
amazing triple jumper. And so we've had some tremendous girl athletes. Your thoughts on that, guys? Have you got some that you think of?
How about you?
As
Football?
far as as far as football, obviously, like you said, I'm younger. Two of the guys that I either played against or watched, one of them, Danny Woodhead from North Platte, played against him in high school. But one guy that is Ty Steinkühler. Just a phenomenal
Little bitty guy.
Oh, small guy, you know, small guy, and he played linebacker for Lincoln Southwest,
Yeah.
and just the physicality that he had and the presence he had out there was just phenomenal. And then he came on to be an offensive lineman. Just kind of those two that don't get mentioned probably as many of the other ones out there, but those were two that kind of stuck out to me after hearing it. You know,
I've had. Were you playing in that game where Scott Siegel was a running back for senior high and Danny was playing, or was that?
nope, that was just a year in front of me. I was
Okay.
a sophomore when Woodhead was a senior.
And did anybody see that thing that Danny Woodhead that publication, a letter to Danny when he was 18?
I just
Did you
saw
read
it and
it?
I haven't read it yet.
Incredible.
How about you? Did you have some? I mean, I like Tommy Rathman. I coached Tommy Rathman.
Oh,
I
man.
got to coach. I was part of the basketball program.
Never a 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah,
I
it-
could not believe.
Won the high jump in the state track meet.
as
Fullback.
sophomore?
He's a fullback.
Yeah.
And he wins the state track meet. Talk about and, you know, don't forget about Scott Frost.
Well,
You know,
Scott
wins
Frost.
the shot put and is a quarterback, wins the hurdles in the shot put in the state track.
Another small town guy, Steve Krewalt from North Loop.
Yeah.
And there was one time I went up and watched him play Petersburg. He was the punter, and
Yeah,
he
the
punts
punter.
he punts the ball. He's the first guy down and just lights up the returner, and I'll never forget that.
He's
either,
one of my
so.
1,000-yard
Yeah,
rushers. I
yep.
mean, come on.
Look at some of the pitchers that have come out of Grand Island.
Oh,
Some of the great
goodness
pitchers in
gracious.
baseball, you know, and I mean Jabba Chamberlain, you know, I mean we've got a whole list of them, and you know, I mean, boy, you go back to Tom Kropp, he's got to be the best that I've seen as a male, the best male athlete I ever saw, by far, was Tom Kropp. I didn't get to see him that much in high school, but he played. You got to try to imagine this, guys. Tom Kropp got drafted by Arizona State in baseball. Okay, I mean, when I say drafted, offered a scholarship. He won the state discus throw and the shot put. I mean, he was right there in both. You look at what he did in basketball, drafted in the NBA, played for the Chicago Bulls, and he was the Shrine Bowl MVP. And he started for 4 years at Kearney State College. So I don't know if anybody can beat Tom Kropp.
No,
Yeah,
And he had a shot in the NFL, too, because he had a tryout with somebody.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh. Yep.
My dad used to be the house band at Peony Park in Omaha. So we went to football games when I was a kid every Friday in Omaha. I saw Gale Sayers play. I saw Roger the Rocket Sayers play. This is years ago. I'd have to say Gale Sayers is one of my favorites. Danny Woodhead, obviously, and a couple of 8-man bags who nobody would probably know. But I've got too many in my head to. Yeah, we'll cover that another time. But I think those are good choices. My goodness gracious. Tom Kropp. I don't think I know a better one than that. Who was the number one?
I was hoping you were going to mention me a little bit.
Well, you were good.
Yeah, no.
You were good.
Hey, there's a whole list before we get to me.
I'll never remember. Time ran out on Jerry Ling and when the Cavaliers came and beat Gibbon. I'll never forget that. Put 2 minutes back on the clock this minute and take it down the field. Well, we're going to close out with boy, this is going to be a bomb on these guys because we're going to switch gears like a son of a gun right here. Who's your choice to get in the World Series? And I'm telling you right now, I can't answer it because I don't know. You're a big Royals fan or not?
No, I'm a big Cub fan.
What do you think? I mean, honestly,
I'm just scared. I'm scared to even say it.
What are you afraid of?
I'm a Cub fan, and I'm just scared of history
when they
repeating
get there,
itself.
when they get there folding up or what?
You know, I can only imagine the day that it comes, and I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later. You look at what they've got set up right now. I think the Chicago Cubs have got to be the National League front runner to be in the postseason.
I would think so.
They're definitely 4 deep at pitching. I don't know I think Hamels maybe worked his way out of that right now.
Might have.
But they're 4 deep in pitching, and then they've got a lineup 1 through 8 that can hit the ball.
Yeah, 1 through 8. So
that can hit the ball. So I think they're the front runner on that end. I think if the Royals can get in, you got to watch out for them. But the team that I'm looking at, and I think Boston. It's a Boston Red Sox team that really hasn't been talked about like many of the Boston teams are. But they're able to score runs, but they're not doing it with power. They're doing it with speed, kind of doing what Royals did the last couple of years. Run the bases, force the teams to field it and throw you out. So my 2 teams right now, I'd say the Cubs and the Red Sox.
I'm a Cardinals fan, but I like everybody. I don't think the Cubs are going to fold. If somebody can tell me at a time during this season, if they're afraid of a 1 game or 3, whatever, going to fold like in a playoff, when have they done that in a streak this year that you can recall? If you can, then maybe have a legit.
It was early, right before the All-Star break. They really folded there. I think they lost 11 or 12 games right there. But
you think they've overcome that?
I think they did. I think they needed that rest, and now you've got the September call-ups to where you can rest some extra guys and you can get some new guys in the bullpen. I think the one series I had in question was this past weekend, and it was against the San Francisco Giants, a team that I think they're going to have to overcome in the postseason possibly if the Giants can get there. But they were able to get 3 out of 4 from the Giants, and that was one thing I really wanted to see. Big motivation there.
How about you, Jim?
There's 4 teams that have a shot to me, and only 4. I would like to think the Blue Jays, the Mets, and the Astros, because of my financial gain, would be there. But I don't.
Why not?
But I played them at a big price because I waited until July to play them when they were that far behind. And the Mets and the Blue Jays just missed winning, going to the World Series last year, and the Astros actually had the Royals beat. And didn't make it. So I tried to go with somebody there that I thought was a price, but the 4 best teams by far. The Cubs are the best team. The Indians, the Rangers, and the Nationals. It's those 4. They're in. They're in. Everybody else we don't know if they're going to get in. Right. So those are the only 4. They're in.
I think so.
All the rest of them that you're going to take, you don't even know if they're going to make it or not. It's so close. There's a game or 2 separating the groups.
I agree, and I think the Cubs-Indians would be a fascinating World Series. One of those teams have got to get it right? I mean, 1945 and 1908, right. Somebody's got to win out of that too. But I just had this hunch that the Red Sox, they're just a team nobody's talking about right now, and that's the way they like it.
Yeah, that's right. And the Nationals of the Orioles were the only one that can be that city versus city. Yep. I mean, very close. You wouldn't have to drive very far to get from game to game.
No,
you
wouldn't.
Was going on.
I like the Nats, but I just don't see the Cubs folding. So
I hope you're right.
I had them pick to win the World Series, and I don't know. I like the Blue Jays a little bit, but I also like Texas to get in there. So who knows? Cubs fans, Zach, who are you picking? You like the Cubs? And that's all we need is this, and we know that. So before we go, I got to have one thing. All you Cubs fans, just keep the fingers crossed and have faith because I think it's going to happen this year. How about that? Well, we covered a lot of things tonight, guys, and next week we'll be back again to cover a whole bunch of different things. But once again, welcome comments and everything. And, if you think we should talk about something you'd like to hear, be sure and let us know. TheIndependent.com for E-Dub over here, Jimmy Lane, Zach Major behind the camera. This is Bobby Mills, the 1,000-Yard Guy. We'll see you next week.
Watch the latest videos from The Independent. Go to video.theindependent.com.